Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you an impactful and revealing story. Let's meet Celeste Hargrove, a former teacher who was in a terrible car accident during a snowstorm. She died, left her own body and found Jesus, but what he showed you on the other side will leave you speechless. A shocking truth about symbols widely used around the world. What seemed harmless is actually a great spiritual deception. So before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now, prepare yourself for this urgent and surprising revelation. The snow was falling heavily that night, December 12, 2023. The wind howled like an invisible beast, and the trees along the road were covered in a thick layer of ice, their branches bowing under the weight. The interstate highway that connected Burlington and Montpelier was almost deserted. I drove with both hands firmly on the steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the car's headlights trying to cut through the white darkness. The radio was turned to a local Christian station, and a children's choir was singing, "Oh, Holy Night." It was comforting, but it also increased the feeling of loneliness on that trip. The Christmas concert at the church had been beautiful, and I felt light despite my tiredness, but there was something in the air, one strange restlessness inside me. Slow down. The voice came into my mind like a whisper. Immediately, my foot released pressure on the accelerator. I looked in the rearview mirror. There were no cars behind. I took a deep breath and continued forward, keeping my speed between 40 and 45 miles per hour. It was then that it happened. Coming out of a curve, the headlights of a truck suddenly appeared on the horizon. Coming in the opposite direction, he slid across the ice, out of control, spinning like a top. The deafening sound of failing brakes ripped through the silence of the night. There is no time. My heart raced. My body reacted before my mind could process what was happening. I turned the steering wheel to try to avoid it, but it was useless. Ice under the tires did not offer any grip. And then, with brutal force, the impact happened. The truck hit the side of my car with an apocalyptic crash. The windshield glass exploded into 1,000 razor-sharp fragments, and my head was thrown back against the back of the seat. The world became a blur of lights and metallic sounds. A searing pain shot through my body as I felt my ribs being crushed. The air was knocked from my lungs. Time slowed down. Every detail was absurdly clear. The smell of gasoline mixed with blood, the biting cold invading the wrecked car, the muffled sound of dissonant alarms, and most of all, the strangest thought of all, I'm dying. It was then that, in the midst of unbearable pain, my soul did what my body could not. I called out the name of Jesus, and then everything went dark. The silence was the first thing I noticed, a silence so profound that it seemed alive, as if time itself had paused. There was no more pain, no cold, no fear, just an indescribable feeling of relief, like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying had been lifted. It was then that I realized I was no longer in the car. My field of vision expanded in an impossible way. I saw myself there, slumped over the steering wheel, with my face bloody and my eyes half open, as if I were in a deep sleep. My body was motionless, a fragile silhouette amidst the twisted metal and shattered glass. My God, the scene was surreal. Medical parameters indicated that I should be unconscious, but there I was, looking at myself from the outside. The smoke-enveloped truck lay on its side a few meters away, its headlights still on. The driver, a burly man in a blue jacket, was trying to get out of the cab, staggering. The first paramedics rushed in, wearing fluorescent clothing. "There's a woman in the car. Are you alive?" one of them shouted. Another leaned over my body, pressing 2 fingers against my neck. His expression became tense. "Weak pulse. We need to remove it now." I watched with a strange calm as they worked. One of the firefighters was trying to open the dented car door, prying with a crowbar. A paramedic was preparing a defibrillator. None of this seemed real to me. It was then that I felt something different. An invisible force began to pull me up. First, gently, then with increasing intensity. I was being lifted, as if a magnet would call me upward. For the first time, cold fear coursed through my soul. I tried to resist, but there was nothing to hold on to. The material world disappeared beneath me as I up. The sky above was not black as it should be on a winter night. It was a golden veil that flickered, as if it was made of liquid light. Stars that did not belong to our universe shone all around. pulsing in a harmonious rhythm. My mind tried to process it. Is this death? But before I could seek an answer, everything around me exploded into light. And then, I saw him. The light around me was indescribable. It wasn't just something that illuminated, but something that transcendence. It didn't come from a single source. It seemed to be alive, vibrating in all directions. It was then that I noticed an overwhelming presence in front of me. He was there, Jesus Christ. I didn't need to ask. I knew, not because someone told me to, but because my soul recognized instantly. He was not like the paintings I had seen all my life. She was not the fragile, pale figure portrayed in paintings. It was majestic, powerful, holy. Your eyes, I lack words to describe them. They were not human eyes. They were like living flames, and at the same time, contained the universe itself, reflecting something that my mind could not comprehend. His face shone like the sun, radiating a holiness that made me feel insignificant and dirty before him. But at the same time, his look was one of pure love. There was no condemnation, just compassion and truth. The weight of his presence made my legs weak. If I still had a physical body, I would definitely have fallen to my knees. He then spoke. Your voice resonated inside my soul, like thunder that did not hurt, but filled my entire being. I chose you to see what the enemy has done to deceive my people. You need to go back and warn them. My heart, or whatever I had left of it in that state, contracted in terror. To go back. I didn't want to go back. I knew what awaited me on earth. Pain, suffering, doubts. There, in that dimension, I felt absolute peace. Something that no experience in earthly life could even compare. And then, as if reading my thoughts, and I knew he could, Jesus stepped forward. His gaze became more intense. You need to see what they don't want you to know. The next instant, without warning, I was transported to another place. The light dissipated, and around me a completely different environment emerged. One golden room and infinite, where symbols hovered in the air, slowly rotating as if they were mystical constellations. And then, the revelations began. The place where I was beyond human understanding. The room had no walls, but at the same time seemed contained in its own space. The floor seemed to be made of liquid gold, reflecting a soft, vivid glow. There were symbols everywhere, hanging in the air like stars in a galaxy. Jesus was by my side. He looked at the symbols and, with a gesture of his hand, made them they lined up around us. My soul knew that that wasn't just any vision. It was a spiritual secret being revealed. He pointed to one of the symbols, the symbol of peace. Immediately, the environment around us changed. I saw a group of Roman soldiers, laughing as they drew that same symbol over the bodies of crucified Christians. My stomach turned. Jesus spoke, his voice echoing with a weight of absolute truth. This symbol does not represent peace. It represents the destruction of true faith. The enemy consecrated it to silence my name. The symbol started to pulse. And then, I saw another scene. Thousands of people throughout history using that same symbol on clothes, flags, jewelry, without knowing what they were carrying with them. It emits a spiritual frequency. The enemy uses it to create a subtle noise so that people cannot hear my voice. A shiver ran up my spiritual spine. Then, another symbol spun in front of us. O Ankh. This time I saw Egyptian priests, surrounded by blue flames, offering sacrifices to dark entities. The Ankh glowed in his hands like a spiritual channeling device. This symbol does not represent life. It represents the ancient alliance with demons. Jesus reached out and made me feel the energy emanating from the symbol. It was heavy, dingy. He then pointed to the Eye of Horus. We ancient temples, occult rituals, and people these days using this symbol without understanding what they were invoking. I saw children tattooing this symbol on their bodies, opening doors without knowing. This is an enemy surveillance mechanism, a portal to demonic influence. Many carry it without knowing what it allows into their lives. My heart was beating fast, but the worst was yet to come. O Ouroboros, the snake biting its own tail, appeared in the center of the room. You, I screamed when I saw your true form. Spiritual chains wrapped around people who wore it as an amulet or tattoo. They're trapped and they don't realize it. My spiritual body trembled. That was in everything. On t-shirts, on logos, on jewelry, on churches. The enemy has made them believe that they are just harmless symbols. But the world is surrounded by them. and few see the truth. My legs gave out. I wanted to cry. I didn't know. Jesus looked at me with overwhelming seriousness. Now you know, and you need to warn them. Before I could react, the room began to crumble into light. And then, I was pulled back. The light that surrounded me suddenly dissipated, and a whirlwind of sensations took care of me. The fall was sudden. I felt my being sucked back, as if crossing an invisible barrier between two worlds. Then the pain returned, an intense, excruciating pain. My lungs felt unable to expand. Each beat of my heart was like an explosion inside my chest. I was back in my physical body. I heard distant voices. She's back. She's breathing. My eyes partially opened. The cold white light of the ambulance's spotlight blinding me. Sirens echoed all around, and I could hear the rustle of paramedics, clothes around me, heart rate stabilizing, pressure still low, but rising. One of the doctors leaned over me, your eyes wide in disbelief. This is impossible. I wanted to speak, but my throat felt dry, as if I hadn't breathed for centuries. Focus on breathing. Mrs. Hargrove, you have been in a serious accident. Accident. The memories came back like a flash. The truck, the impact, Jesus, the revelation room, demonic symbols. A wave of adrenaline coursed through my body. I needed to tell someone. With effort, I tried to raise my hand, grabbing the nearest paramedic's sleeve. My words came out in a hoarse whisper. I saw Jesus. The man exchanged a look with a colleague, clearly skeptical, but his expression softened when he saw the intensity in my gaze. We're taking you to the hospital. Stay calm. But I couldn't stay calm. You shouldn't be alive. My rational mind knew that the state of my body should be critical. Broken ribs, punctured lung, internal bleeding, but I felt something different. Something miraculous was happening. My thoughts were crystal clear. My breathing improved every second. And then, when the ambulance started to move, I felt a presence by my side. Jesus, it was still there. I couldn't see him like I used to, but I knew that he was there. One last sentence echoed in my soul. Now your mission begins. Deep down, I knew my life would never be the same again. The hospital was a whirlwind of voices and bright lights. I saw nurses running, monitors flashing, doctors discussing my clinical status with incredulous expressions. This doesn't make sense. The skull fracture should be causing significant brain bleeding, but the tests don't show anything serious. Her pelvis was crushed, but the bones began to regenerate faster than any case we've ever seen. That's impossible. They murmured around my bed, but I didn't need explanations. I knew what was happening. Jesus had cured me, but along with the healing came the mission, and when I tried to share it, rejection began. My daughter, Abigail, arrived the next morning, eyes swollen from crying. When he saw me awake, he let out a shaky breath and ran to hug me. Mom, I thought you wouldn't survive. I hugged her back, feeling my heart sink. She was the first person I needed to tell everything to. When she walked away, I held her hands. Abby, I need to tell you what happened to me. I know. The accident was horrible, Mom, but you're going to be okay. It's not that. I left my body, I died, and I saw Jesus. His eyes blinked in confusion. What? He showed me something. Abby showed me the truth about the symbols we use, about how they are portals to evil spiritual forces. Her face closed. His expression, once filled with concern and love, became cold and defensive. Mother. His voice dropped to a tone filled with disbelief. You hit your head. Very strong. No, daughter, I'm serious. I saw the symbol of peace, the Eye of Horus, the Ankh. They are used by the enemy. She took her hands away from mine and took a step back. My God, do you really believe that? I don't believe. I know. His face contorted with a mixture of frustration and sadness. Mom, you suffered trauma. You almost died. This could be your brain trying to process everything. Abby, please listen to me. I don't want to hear this. She crossed her arms, her gaze hard. You sound like one of those religious fanatics on the internet. That hurt. I'm not a fanatic, but I saw what I saw. You have to believe me. She shook her head, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I thought I lost you, and now I feel like I'm losing you in another way. Daughter, no mother, not now. And then she left. My heart broke, but Abby wasn't the only one to react like this. I tried to tell Pastor Elias Carter, from the church I attended for years. I have always admired him for his firm and balanced preaching, but when I mentioned the revelations Jesus gave me, his reaction was of coldness and skepticism. Sister Celeste, you have experienced intense trauma. This may have been an illusion. It was not an illusion. I saw it with my own eyes. He sighed, adjusting his glasses. The Bible teaches us about false signs and wonders. You need to be careful. Careful. I expected that he listened to me, but there he was, treating me as if I had been tricked by the devil himself. My frustration grew with each attempt to share the truth. Colleagues, friends, even my own faith community. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy. And then, I started to realize the loneliness. I was alone on this mission. But there was one thing no one could take away from me. I knew what I had seen. And me, I wouldn't shut up. The silence in my house has never felt so heavy. After being discharged from the hospital, I returned to my home hoping to find comfort. But what I felt was an invisible weight in the air. It was as if something was wrong, as if the atmosphere was charged. And then, the truth hit me. My house was full of symbols. Everything Jesus showed me, it was there, all around me, disguised as art, culture, and innocent decor. My breathing became heavy. I needed to act. I started with the obvious, the jewelry. I ran to my dresser and opened the drawer where I kept my jewelry and accessories. There were my bracelets with the peace symbol, my Ankh pendant that I bought at a fair, an Eye of Horus necklace that I received years ago from a friend. I held each one of them, feeling one discomfort in the soul. Before, they were just decorations. But now I knew. I threw them in a box. I wouldn't sell it or donate it. They needed to be destroyed. The next step was more difficult. I went to my bookshelf. I was a history teacher, passionate about ancient cultures. My collection was full of books about Egypt, ancient civilizations, alchemy, and esoteric symbols. Many had images and sigils that I never considered dangerous, but now I saw the truth. Each symbol carried a spiritual meaning. I picked up a book on occult symbolism and started leafing through it. The images looked different now. It was as if there was an invisible presence hidden within them. My stomach turned. I closed the book tightly. I took a deep breath and threw him into the box, along with the others. The cleaning continued. Decorative pillows with strange patterns, pictures that now gave me goosebumps, an old notebook where I used to draw geometric symbols when I was younger. All of this went into the pile. Little by little, as I cleaned my house, the weight in the air began to lessen. But there was something more. My computer. I connected the notebook and started reviewing my social networks, wallpapers, shared images, digital art. I realized that I myself had already shared symbols without knowing it. That gave me chills. How many people did the same without having any idea what they were spreading? I deleted everything. And then, I realized one last thing. At the bottom of my drawer, I kept an old diary. In it, there was notes from when I tried to practice alternative spirituality, guided meditations, scribbled symbols, sigils created when I thought they were just harmless games. My fingers shook as I turned the pages. What had I opened up for myself? Without hesitation, I closed the diary and threw it into the pile. That night, when everything was gathered, I took the box out to the backyard. I took a metal container and poured everything inside. My breathing was rapid. I knew what I had to do. I picked up a match, and I set it on fire. The flames grew quickly, consuming the symbols, the books, the objects loaded with spiritual meaning. The heat illuminated my face, but, contrary to what I expected, I didn't feel guilt or fear. On the contrary, I felt relief. It was like invisible chains had been broken. I hugged myself, closing my eyes, whispering in prayer, "Jesus, purify my house, purify my life. I renounce everything that kept me away from you." And then, for the first time since I came back from my near-death experience, I felt peace. I was free, but I knew that was just the beginning. My house was clean. Now, I needed to help others see the truth. That night, after purifying my house, I knelt on the floor of my room, shaking, not from the cold, not from fear, but why I knew there was something that still needed to be done. I had burned the objects, thrown away the symbols, removed everything from my physical space. But what about space? Spiritual. I remembered the words of Jesus. The enemy's greatest trick is to make people believe that these symbols are harmless. They weren't. They were portals. I didn't know how long I was surrounded by these things. how much negative spiritual influence had already entered my life. I needed to cut these connections. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath and began to pray. Lord Jesus. My voice cracked. Suddenly, my body felt heavy, as if something invisible was pressing down on me, as if spiritual forces were trying to stop me from talking. My heart raced. I was feeling the enemy's resistance, but that only made me more certain. You needed to continue. I steadied my voice. Lord Jesus, I renounce any spiritual influence or authority I may have given to the enemy through these symbols. I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was as if something was breaking around me. I break every spiritual bond created by my interaction with these symbols. My head throbbed. My chest felt tight. But I wouldn't stop. By your blood, Lord, I claim back all spiritual ground that I may have unknowingly given away. The room seemed to light up. Holy Spirit, reveal to me any hidden symbol, any spiritual bond that needs to be resolved. A series of memories invaded my mind. I remembered an old tattoo that I had seen and liked when I was younger. I remembered a ring I wore for years without noticing the symbol carved into it. I remembered each time I bought clothes just because they looked nice, without questioning what they were carrying. I didn't know, but now you knew. My eyes filled with tears. I choose now to align my life with only your truth, Jesus. I choose to follow only your symbols, your word, your light. I closed my fists. My voice came out stronger. In the name of Jesus, I renounce every evil influence. I completely disconnect from anything that has separated me from you. The room seemed to shake, and then a supernatural peace enveloped me. The weight disappeared. It was as if an invisible fog had lifted. How if something inside me had been ripped out and replaced with something pure, light, full of light. I hugged myself and cried. I was free. The prayer of renunciation, it had worked. But I knew this was just the beginning. Now that I was free, I needed to warn others. The world needed to know. Over the next few days, one thought wouldn't leave my head. The world needs to know. I tried to follow my routine normally, but I couldn't ignore the weight of the mission that Jesus had given me. Every object, every logo, every geometric pattern around me seemed to glow with a hidden meaning that I hadn't seen before. I looked at the store windows and saw symbols scattered everywhere. The symbol of peace on t-shirts and jewelry, the Egyptian Ankh in tattoos and decorations, the Eye of Horus in makeup and accessories, hidden sigils in corporate logos, Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail, printed on book covers and posters. They were it all. It was like, suddenly, I had been taken out of an illusion and could see the real world. And what I saw terrified me. Almost no one noticed. People of all ages carried these symbols without knowing what they meant. They tattooed them on their bodies, hung them on their necks, drew them in their notebooks. Without knowing that they were opening doors, I needed to speak. My first attempt was through social media. I wrote a detailed text about my experience and posted it on Facebook. I died. I saw Jesus, and he showed me the truth about the symbols that the enemy has spread in the world. You may think they are just harmless images, but I saw what they really do on the spiritual plane. Please read until the end. I described everything, what Jesus showed me, what the symbols really represent, how they function as portals to evil spiritual influences, how we need to remove them from our lives. I clicked publish and waited. For the first few minutes, silence. Then the comments started. That doesn't make sense. You hit your head, that's all. This is religious fanaticism. Stop spreading fear. God would never care about symbols. That's a conspiracy theory. My heart sank. There were some private messages of people who wanted to know more, who felt something strange in their own lives and wanted to get rid of these symbols. But most attacked me. It didn't take long for some of my own friends blocked me. My daughter, Abigail, called me furious. Mom, what are you doing? You're becoming a joke on the internet. I need to warn people, Abby. Warn about what? What drawings can summon demons from? Do you listen to yourself? I took a deep breath. Do you think I would make this up? Do you think I would risk everything just to tell a lie? There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, his voice came colder. Don't ask me to support this. And hung up. I stared at my phone, holding back tears. You knew that would be rejected. But feel it. It was worse than I imagined. I tried to talk to the pastor Elias Carter again. He received me patiently, but with that look of someone who had already formed an opinion before listening to me. Sister Celeste, have you considered that this might be a test? A deception from the enemy to divert you from the true path? Pastor, I was the one who saw it. I was with Jesus. He showed me. He sighed. I understand your experience, but we need to focus on what really matters. The love of Christ. I felt my stomach sink. This is important. Jesus told me to warn people, and I believe you believe that. But our church cannot promote this type of message. It was a polite silence, a delicate way of saying, stop it. I left church that day knowing that I could no longer count on anyone, but I wouldn't give up. Why, what was at stake was much bigger than my reputation. It was about souls. I needed to continue. The voices around me tried to silence me. My daughter, my friends, my church. Everyone tried to convince me that I was wrong, that it was just a post-traumatic delusion. But I knew. I saw it with my own eyes. And above all, I heard the words of Jesus. That night, after another day of rejection and isolation, I knelt down to pray. Lord, I'm trying, but no one wants to listen to me. The room was dark, lit only by the dim light of a lamp. The silence was absolute. And then, I felt his presence again, not with my physical eyes, but with my soul. A heat took over the environment. My entire body shivered, and deep in my being, I heard his voice. Don't stop. Keep talking. My hands shook. But Lord, they don't believe it. They make fun of me. Even those who follow you reject me. There was a pause. Then his answer came like soft thunder, full of authority and love, just like they did to me. My eyes filled with tears. I understood. Jesus was also rejected. He spoke the truth, and people crucified him for it. Why would it be any different with me? My mission was not to convince anyone. My mission was talking. Era warned them whether they listened or not. Then I understood. The truth was this. The enemy is everywhere. He hides his presence in symbols, in images, in patterns that seem harmless. He makes people laugh at the truth so that they do not realize their own slavery. He manipulates, blinds, uses culture, the media, fashion, even religion to keep people under his influence. And the world is falling into the trap. Jesus. He didn't tell me to open my eyes so I could go back. He told me to warn, because one day, everyone will be accountable. And when that day comes, many will realize it too late. I remembered his last words to me before returning me to my body. Tell them these are not just symbols. These are keys that the enemy uses to open doors that should remain closed. Their eternal souls are at stake. Salvation is not in images. It's not in rituals. It's not in symbols. The salvation, it is only in Jesus Christ. And I would give my life to let people know that. That night, I said my last prayer before going to sleep. Lord, may at least one soul awaken to the truth through my testimony. And then, finally, I felt peace. Conclusion. Since then, my life has been a daily struggle. I still get rejected. I still get ridiculed. But it doesn't matter to me anymore. Why? I know the truth. And if my mission is to speak, then I will speak. Even if only one heart listens. Even if only one eye opens. Even if only one soul is saved. That will be enough. Jesus will return. And when he returns, I want to have fulfilled the mission given to me. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.